What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. Hope you're all doing well tonight. It is Thursday evening. We got a football game going on in about 45 minutes, the Seattle Seahawks and the 49ers. So excited to watch that one. In this video, we're going to hang out for the next half an hour or so. I'll get to you guys' questions in just a moment. I want to recap kind of just all the major player practice news for today, and then we can answer your guys' questions. There's a lot. I made a list earlier today, and it took me forever. Like, there's an absurd amount of injuries going on right now in the NFL. And I'm just going to be reading the Underdog NFL Twitter feed here and just kind of going through what's going on here. So tight end David Njoku for the Cleveland Browns, he says he will play. He didn't practice yesterday, practiced today. He's on track to play. A little bit of concern for the Raiders. Obviously no Devontae Adams, but Jacoby Myers and Zamir White have now missed back-to-back practices. Both of those guys are trending towards doubtful. Evan Ingram for the Jaguars, limited practice. He's on track to play. He got limiteds in last week, so I'm assuming we're going to see Evan Ingram play in London this weekend. Gus Edwards for the Chargers, not practicing, back-to-back days off of a bye, so that's very concerning. He's had a full week to heal, still not ready. I think if you guys have the space, I think Kamani Vidal is worth picking up. There's going to be another back in there if Gus Edwards can't go. Christian Watson for the Packers, limited back-to-back. He's on track to play this weekend potentially. Cleveland Browns, Nick Chubb, David Njoku, Deonta Foreman, all limited in practice. I believe Njoku and Deonta Foreman are going to play, but we're still unsure on Nick Chubb. My money's probably on set week 7 or 8 for Nick Chubb. Rashad Bateman did not practice yesterday, limited today. Good news for Dameon Pierce. He practiced in full for the first time in a while for the Texans. And then Joe Mixon was a surprise limited today. So I don't know if Joe Mixon's going to play, but he's on track towards getting back in the lineup. And I think since Dameon Pierce they're basically saying he's going to play, I don't think we need Cam Akers anymore. If it's Pierce, Ogunbowale, and Akers, I don't know if I want to start anybody in that mess. And then we'll see if Joe Mixon plays as well. Big one on the Patriots here. Ramondre Stevenson back-to-back not practicing with a foot injury. So I would say he's on track to be doubtful for this weekend. If Antonio Gibson's available on your waiver wire, I think he's worth a pickup. Good news for the Eagles. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, both practicing in full. Taysom Hill doesn't practice today. I don't think we're going to see Taysom Hill this weekend. And another kind of surprise one, Rachaad White, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, does not practice back-to-back days with a foot injury. So I know Bucky Irving's dealing with a little bit of a hamstring right now. Rachaad White trending towards not playing in this one. So if you have Bucky Irving, we're going to see his projections go up soon. It says Alvin Kamara and Rashid Shaheed officially limited in practice today. I think those guys are both trending towards playing, and I'm not really worried about their availability yet. They did play Monday night, so they're probably just taking it easy with them this week. Good news for the Bengals. Zach Moss and Mike Gesicki return to limited practices today. I think they're both on track to play. Another surprise one at the running back position. Brian Robinson does not practice again today. Didn't practice yesterday, not today. It looks like Austin Eckler and Jeremy McNichols could be the two starting running backs for the Commanders this weekend in Baltimore. The Colts, Anthony Richardson, Trey Sermon, both fully participated in practice. So I think it's safe to say we're going to see Richardson start the game. And I would say Trey Sermon probably just got a day off yesterday. He's probably the starting running back, as Jonathan Taylor and Josh Downs don't practice today. So concerns on Josh Downs here. I thought he was going to be a good play this weekend, but it looks like Alec Pierce and Adonai Mitchell are going to be the two starting receivers for the Colts. I'm expecting Jonathan Taylor to miss. Malik Neighbors not practicing Thursday. The head coach said that he was he regressed, which is not good. So I think if you have Malik Neighbors, don't expect him to play week 6, maybe week 7. We see him back. The Buffalo Bills are really dinged up right now. You have James Cook and Khalil Shakir not practicing back-to-back days. They do play on Monday night, so this is technically their Wednesday. You guys know how I feel about Wednesday practices. So we'll see if Khalil Shakir and James Cook can play or practice tomorrow. And then I think for the most part, I'm all caught up on major reports for today. So with that, I'm going to open up some questions here, and we'll just hang out for the next half an hour or so, guys. Good evening to Harris. Hope you're doing well, bud. We're starting JSN or Wandale. I'm assuming that's Wandale Robinson. I'm gonna lean Jackson Smith-Njigba. I like Wandale Robinson. I just don't think he has that much of a ceiling. I don't see him catching the 10, 11, 12 passes that we saw a week or two ago here. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba in the slot is probably where I want to attack this team. I'm going to pull up some 49er stats here. And the 49ers defense has just not really been playing great. They've allowed 6 receivers over double digits in full PPR this year so far. So that's at least 1 or 2 receivers per game here. I'm going to go with Jackson Smith-Njigba and the passing offense of the Seattle Seahawks. Good evening to Jason. Hope you're doing well. Harris is asking, do I trade DK and Montgomery for Swift and Harrison? I prefer the DK Metcalf, David Montgomery side. I know DeAndre Swift's playing very well right now, but I think David Montgomery is a safer bet long term. I also like the infrastructure of the Lions offense. Montgomery scored a touchdown in every game. We're not sure if Swift's going to score a touchdown every game, but he's getting a lot of volume. But we also know that he does get dinged up every now and then. And then with Harrison versus DK Metcalf, I like Marvin Harrison a lot to get better as the year goes on, but I feel comfortable with DK Metcalf, a proven commodity here. I'm probably holding on to DK and Montgomery. So I'm assuming you have Bigsby and Jerome Ford on your roster, and you're asking if you should pick up Bucky Irving. I do like Bucky Irving this week, but I don't know if you need to run out and grab him over dropping these guys here. Tampa Bay is playing the 49ers this weekend, or the Tampa Bay is playing the New Orleans Saints this weekend. And the Saints have allowed a couple running backs to have good games. They let Kareem Hunt, get a decent game the other night. Saquon Barkley had a big game against them. But other than that, they held Bijan and Algier kind of in check. They held the Cowboys in check here. I don't think it's a great matchup. I do think Bucky probably, gets upwards of, 15 touches in that one. So if I have to drop one, the answer is probably Bigsby, just because I still think Jerome Ford has some value in the PPR game. Bigsby's a good runner, but he's not really adding points via receiving. That's all Travis Etienne right now. So for this weekend, I would probably rank these guys Bucky, Bigsby, Ford. So I guess Bigsby's probably the cut, but I think rest of season, I still think Jerome Ford has a nice value there. Demario Douglas or Trey Tucker rest of season. I'm going to go with Demario Douglas. I think I'm kind of excited about Drake May, and just the overall floor of a Demario Douglas is pretty steady, whether that's, 4 catches for 40, 50 yards. I think you can count on him being a security blanket for Drake May. Whereas Trey Tucker, I like the boom that we've seen here, but I think he's going to be hard to trust every week in your lineup. So just from, if I had to set someone in my lineup every week, I'm probably setting Demario Douglas just to get those steady points. If Neighbors is out, is Slayton a must start over Pickens and Tolbert? I don't know. I like Slayton a lot in this one. I think it's a good matchup for Darius Slayton. Let me pull up what the numbers are saying here against Cincinnati. And honestly, Daniel Jones has been playing pretty well. Cincinnati's defense has allowed 2 receivers to go over 20 fantasy points in PPR. That's Deontay and Terry McLaurin. They've allowed 4 receivers to go over 15 fantasy points. So they've allowed a couple guys, to have some nice days against them. So I do like the matchup for Darius Slayton. I just don't know if I trust it quite as much. I think Pickens is in a good matchup against the Raiders. I also like Jalen Tolbert against the Lions. If I'm ranking these guys this weekend, let me just double check and see what I did here on my rankings. I do have a rankings update for members coming out tomorrow. I kind of want to wait till the end of the day just to see the final practice reports to get the most accurate rankings for you guys. But let's see here what I have. I believe it's close between Pickens and Tolbert. I'm going to lean George Pickens. I'm going to lean George Pickens as the guy. Polk or Sermon, we're not starting Polk quite yet. We need to see what he looks like with Drake May. And if Jonathan Taylor's out, I'm going to play Trey Sermon. Even though, I know Tennessee, they have a decent defense, but I think Trey Sermon he had 5 or 6 catches last weekend as well. I think it's a good matchup for him to just rack up volume So I'm going to say Trey Sermon over Jalen Polk. And the Tennessee Titans have allowed Breece Hall to get 24 points, Braylon Allen to get 19, Emmanuel Wilson to get 16 here, and the few other running backs didn't really play as well. But I do like the running game for the Colts this weekend. Should we pick up Calvin Ridley? I have DeAndre Hopkins. I don't really want two Titans pass catchers. I don't think Calvin Ridley is like honestly, Calvin Ridley's he's probably in that Darius Slayton tier that we just kind of answered that question, that Darius Slayton, Jalen Tolbert tier. I don't really feel comfortable starting Calvin Ridley. I think if I have to choose between Ridley or Hopkins, I'm going to choose Hopkins. They're coming off a bye. Hopkins should be ready to go. I don't think we need two Titans receivers on our squad here. I'm going to look around for some other more reports here. If you guys want to keep firing up questions, please do. I'm excited for tonight's game. I think the 49ers are going to try and run the ball as much as they can against Seattle here. Seattle has, they got some issues on defense right now. So I think that's probably the way the 49ers are going to attack this game. I think Jordan Mason's going to probably rack up upwards of 20 touches in this one. And Seattle, against the running back this year, they are allowing about 23.16 fantasy points per game to the running back position. They've allowed a lot of rushing yards, 533, which ranks 25th in the NFL. And they're a little bit better against receiving backs here, but I expect Jordan Mason to get a heavy workload tonight. Let me see what else I can find here for you guys. Let's see. So I'm going to be posting like a TikTok or a YouTube short tomorrow about guys that you guys should be stashing. And if you guys are on your – I always look at desktop version, the computer version of fantasy stuff here. But if you go to the health tab and you click on IR eligible players, you're able to find some really interesting players to scoop up here. At the top of my list here, and I added this player in a couple leagues today. It's Kendre Miller for the Saints. We have Alvin Kamara racking up touches and honestly kind of like just on a downslide right now as well as he started the year. He's kind of been slipping a little bit. Kendre Miller is a guy that I think when he comes back is going to be the running back 2 over Jamal Williams. I think Marshawn Lloyd back week 7, he could mix in and be the number 2 back in Green Bay again. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who we expect to enter the fold after the bye. Keaton Mitchell for the Ravens, which I think he's still a little bit a ways away, but stashing some of these running backs make a lot of sense. I do like Audric Estime quite a bit for the Denver Broncos. Also, Zay Jones for the Arizona Cardinals. I think we're going to see Zay Jones potentially. He's practicing in full with the team. He had a 5-game suspension. He could be the number 3 receiver. I don't know if he's ahead of Michael Wilson yet, but he could be the number 3 receiver for the Arizona Cardinals. So he's worth a pickup. And then also guys like I mentioned Estime. I do like Cordero Patterson still, but I don't know if we need to stash him. But those are some of my favorite, IR eligible stashes right now. If you have I have Cam Akers in a few leagues, and I let him go today, Harris. I think just all the signs, Dameon Pierce is going to play. And last week we saw Dare Ogunbowale be the RB1 over Cam Akers. So if all the Texans running backs are healthy, like Cam Akers is RB4, I think it's safe to let him go. I think there's a 50-50 shot Joe Mixon plays in this one. And if he does not play, I think you're going to see a 3-way committee with Pierce, Akers, and Ogunbowale. If you're playing Akers, you're praying for a touchdown because he's been good doing that. But I don't really feel like I need to roster Cam Akers. I'd rather go pick up Estime or Kendre Miller or one of these IR stashes, I think, over Cam Akers right now. And if you're looking at Dameon Pierce, I mean, we should probably talk about the Buffalo Bills backup running back options behind James Cook, because I don't know if James Cook is going to go in this one. It's a tough matchup against the New York Jets defense, but Ray Davis has been the primary, first and second down running back, and Ty Johnson has been the guy that offers third down and kind of 2-minute drill situations. And I think both guys are going to be in play. If no James Cook on that evening, I think you're probably looking at 7 to 10 points projected for Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. So in one league, I dumped Cam Akers and Samaje Perine, and I picked up both Ray Davis and Ty Johnson to see how this unfolds. So I think if you're looking for a player I'm kind of uncomfortable starting a Texans running back. Honestly, I think if I'm going to rank the Texans back this weekend, I'm going to say Ogunbowale, Pierce, and then Akers. That's assuming, again, no Joe Mixon for this weekend. But I think if you're looking for somebody, I know the Buffalo Bills, their backup running backs are very low owned. They might be available in your leagues. I'd rather try one of those guys. And if I had to choose to start one, here's how I think the Bills are going to work these guys. I think we've seen Ray Davis get 7, 7, 9, 3 carries in a few of his games. I expect him to be the guy that gets maybe 10 to 12 carries and a catch or two in the offense. And if they do get to short yardage or goal line situations, I expect him to be the running back. But I do like Ty Johnson to mix in for 5 to 7 carries. I think he's going to be a guy that gets you 2, 3 catches and plays in 2-minute and third downs. So I'm kind of out on Cam Akers at the moment. Let me see if I can find any more information here that we need to cover. So I know I got a question about Trey Tucker earlier. If he's the wide receiver 1 this weekend, they're playing Denver. I'm not very excited about, one, the offense as a whole, going from Minshew to Aiden O'Connell. I kind of want to avoid the entire Raiders team. I think the only Raider that I'm comfortable playing is Brock Bowers. And even if Jacoby plays, man, I don't know how healthy he is and how great of an output he's going to have against one of the best defenses in the league right now. So I'm kind of just out on the Raiders this weekend. Let me see if I can find anything else. But I think we got most of it covered up and out of the way here. So if you guys do have more questions, keep them coming. I'm going to look for a couple other things that might be interesting to talk about. I do think if you guys are in a spot where you want to stash a running back for the weekend, I think Kamani Vidal would be the guy that I'm looking for the Chargers. Again, I don't think – it doesn't look like Gus Edwards is going to play in this one. And we know J.K. Dobbins has an injury history that's pretty lengthy and pretty severe. If anything happens to him, I don't think they're going to turn to Gus Edwards and say, you're our guy. The other pickup that I like, because there's a couple guys on bye right now that I think makes sense, whether it's Blake Corum or Jalen Wright. I think both those guys looked good last weekend, and we finally saw Blake Corum hop Ronnie Rivers to be the RB2. And I think after the bye, we might see more Blake Corum as the running back too, which I'm excited about. And they've been running Kieran Williams really hard. He's been getting like 20 touches a game. If he misses a game or two, like we're ranking Blake Corum probably as a must start, running back too for that weekend. I do like Roschon Johnson. He's only 16% available or, owned in ESPN leagues. And he's got 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. The last 3 games, he's had 10, 8.6, and 14.5 PPR points. A game against Jacksonville, I expect him to be heavily involved. And if they do get into the goal line situations, they have shown that Roschon Johnson is their goal line back, despite DeAndre Swift getting one last week. And then Jalen Wright, man, I'm very intrigued. We've seen him ramp up the last few games here. And of course, Devon Achane got hurt in week 5, but Jalen Wright looked really good. 13 for 86. That's 6.6 yards per carry. He still hasn't caught a pass this season, but he's been running routes and he's involved in the third down and receiving game. But he's a guy that I think is very talented. We know Raheem Mostert is often hard to trust from an injury standpoint, and then Devon Achane has got a concussion. We're not guaranteed he's going to play in week 7. I think if I want to have a guy on my team that I just hold on to for the next month and see what happens, I think Jalen Wright and Blake Corum are at the top of those lists, as well as we talked about Marshawn Lloyd, Kendre Miller. I think Ray Davis and Ty Johnson should be owned for the next couple weeks. And I also think Trey Sermon, maybe even Jeremy McNichols for Washington. We've seen him have 2 nice games in back-to-back weeks. He scored 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games, and he seems to be like a guy that you can, if B-Rob or Eckler are missing, you can probably plug in him and feel pretty decent about getting some points there. So I like those guys. Let's talk about some receivers here that we should probably stash. And I think I've been getting a lot of questions on, Josh Downs or Jalen Tolbert. I think both those guys are really good stash plays. I also think you want to hold on to Dontavian Wicks. Don't let that last week discourage you. He still led the team in targets, and I think he looked good. Just couldn't haul on a couple of the catches. But Tolbert, I think if you have Jalen Tolbert right now, like you're feeling pretty good about it. You have the number 2 receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. He seems to have the trust of Dak Prescott. I think he's totally startable as a wide receiver 3 flex this weekend against the Lions in what should be a high scoring game. I want to make sure that Romeo Dobbs, Xavier Legette, these guys aren't on the waiver wires. I think Alec Pierce, you could probably start Alec Pierce this weekend if you're in a pinch at receiver. It is a tough matchup on paper against Tennessee, but I still think Pierce can make your day with just one play. I'm very interested in stashing the 2 receivers for the New England Patriots, Demario Douglas and Jalen Polk. I think both guys are worth a shot and could be, Drake May's favorite target. I'm actually surprised. Like Juju Smith-Schuster's only at 17% rostered on ESPN leagues, so he's a guy that I think needs to be more owned. Double check your leagues. I got a few questions on Ray McCloud. I'm not super excited about Ray McCloud. He's seen some nice targets the last couple games, 6 catches in each of the last 2 games. I suppose if you need to, throw out somebody there in a pinch as a wide receiver 3 flex, I'm open to it. What do I think about Justice Hill this weekend? I'm not super pumped about Justice Hill. He does run a lot of routes, and he's gotten a few touchdowns in the last the last few weeks, but he's not really a guy I want to start. Now, it's a good matchup against the Commanders. He's at best he's getting 4 to 5 carries. That's what he's had in the last 4 weeks, and then his catches are all over the place. In 2 games, he caught 6 passes. The other 3s had 2, 2, and 1. So we can't really depend on him being involved as a receiver. Last weekend, we saw his floor of 3.5 PPR points. Otherwise, his scores have been 21, 7, 5, and 11. I think if you're in a pinch and you need a running back, I think he's okay, but I'd rather take a shot on Ray Davis, Ty Chandler, some of the other running backs that we've discussed. And definitely Antonio, if you can get Antonio Gibson right now, Harris, I think I totally would play Antonio Gibson over some of those guys. And I still like Tyrone Tracy against Cincinnati. I think even though Devin Singletary's on track to play, they're going to have, some opportunities for Tyrone Tracy to get the ball. And he might be I'd rather play Tyrone Tracy than Justice Hill straight up. Tracy's been getting 4 to 5 carries per game and a catch or 2. I think that's kind of Justice Hill's workload. And there's a chance that Tyrone gets even more this week after looking good in week 5. Let me see if there's any other receivers. What about rest of season? I don't think he's got a ton of value. The rest, you're never going to start him and feel good about it. And even if Derrick Henry gets hurt, they're not going to change his role all that much. Sure, maybe he gets an extra carry or 2, but they're still going to bring in another back to be the primary running back. They're going to keep Justice Hill's role probably the same. So I'm not in love with Justice Hill. I think he's just like a last player on your bench kind of thing. If I have Justice Hill, I'm picking instead of Justice Hill, I'd rather own some of those IR stashes or Blake Corum, Jalen Wright, some of those guys that have the opportunity that when their number gets called, they're the guys getting 15 touches in a game. So I don't see Justice Hill ever racking up double-digit touches consistently. Besides a random game that we don't use him for. Other players that I don't mind stashing right now, Adonai Mitchell for the Colts. He's going to be a starting, receiver in the Colts offense with Michael Pittman Jr. out. I want to hold on to Jordan Whittington. Darius Slayton looked good. I think he's worth a shot this weekend if you need a wide receiver 3 flex. Rashad Bateman's been looking good. He did catch a touchdown last weekend and had a season-high 8 targets, 4 for 58. He had his best game of the year last week. He's kind of a desperation play. Other deeper receivers, like deep guys, I don't know if I have any for you guys, but maybe Xavier Hutchinson, the Texans receiver that's going to be taking Nico Collins' spot. He might be worth a look in very, very deep leagues. And then Zay Jones, probably the last guy that I will recommend as a deep receiver option. Pick up Mitchell or Calvin Ridley. I'll probably go with Adonai Mitchell. We kind of know what Calvin Ridley is. He really hasn't been trustworthy this year, and honestly, that entire Titans passing offense has not been worth kind of starting. So I think I'm going to lean with Adonai Mitchell, and especially for rest of season, we don't know. Maybe Adonai Mitchell, now that he's a starting receiver for the next few games, maybe he takes off and he becomes something that we aren't projecting yet. So I do like Mitchell quite a bit. The Colts' upcoming schedule: Tennessee, Miami, Houston. Could be some nice passing days ahead here. And they found a way to get him involved. He went 4 for 38 last weekend, 7 targets. He had a carry for 4 yards. That's his second straight game getting a carry. I think they want to get him the ball, and some of the advanced metrics that I've seen on Adonai Mitchell, like he leads the league in separation. So he is running good routes. We just need to find a way to get him the ball consistently. So I'll take a gamble here. I still think Calvin Ridley's fine, but I don't know if I'm ever going to feel comfortable starting Calvin Ridley. Honestly, I don't know if I'm ever feel comfortable starting Adonai Mitchell either, unless Joe Flacco's in there. But I think Calvin Ridley, he's had one good game, 24.7, an okay game week 1, 8 points, but the last 2 weeks before the bye, a 1.9 and a 2.5. I don't really want to gamble with that. I need a guy with a higher floor. Let me see if I can find any tight ends for you guys to monitor here. We have a few more minutes, so if you guys have any more questions, please fire them up. My tight end 1 for the week is Trey McBride. I think my tight end 2 is Ferguson. My tight end 3 is Brock Bowers. I think George Kittle's number 4. And then I think I went Sam Laporta 5, Tucker Kraft number 6. And then there's a lot of questions after those guys, whether it's Kyle Pitts, Tucker Kraft, David Njoku, Dalton Kincaid, Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz, Evan Ingram. Those are probably the top 12 tight ends that I would rank for this weekend. If you're in a pinch and you need a tight end for a guy in a bye week, I think maybe Tyler Conklin. Cade Otton looks pretty good. I think Dalton Schultz is in play with Nico Collins out. Dalton Schultz against the Patriots makes some sense. And I also like Cole Kmet. I don't mind, some deeper guys here. Maybe Theo Johnson, who as a rookie, he hadn't been doing much, but last weekend he caught all 5 of his targets for 48 yards. So I'm watching Theo Johnson. He should be owned in dynasty leagues. But otherwise, tight end looking kind of thin right now. But if I don't have any more questions for the night, I'm going to let you guys go. Again, it's Thursday evening. I'm available this weekend. So if you guys do have any questions or need anything, hit me up on Twitter or comment on the video, all that good stuff. I will be posting a player prop video on Saturday morning, and then Sunday we will go live at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. We'll check in on the Jags Bears game and answer any questions you guys have, as well as go over the actives and inactives for Sunday. Slayton versus Mingo. I'm going Slayton in this one. Again, we have Malik Neighbors trending towards not playing. Jonathan Mingo really hasn't shown us anything in a year and a quarter of football here. Slayton's a pretty decent outside receiver. I'm going to roll it with Slayton. He's kind of the hot hand right now. But hey, that's it for me. Enjoy the game tonight. Hope you guys get all the points, or your opponents don't get any of the points. Whatever you guys need, enjoy the game. We'll see you this weekend. Peace.